the process in it itself becomes the punishment. And guess what? In small units and in small departments, it becomes toxic.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Blah, 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 Something Wellness podcast. We have an awesome group today, and we are continuing the conversation about navigating toxic work environments and not wanting to just sit around and complain and commiserate, but actually talk about some solutions that can help move the needle forward and maybe help you and your department be a little less toxic. So, on that note, I'm going to go around. Everybody, I'm your host, Tami Sharp. I'm going to have my team start. Greg Nottingham, will you please introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. Thank you, Tami. Thank you for having me on. Greg Nottingham, Chief of Staff here at Law Enforcement Coaching, and I am 31 years, did 31 years with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, retired as a sergeant, worked a lot of different areas, patrol, lake patrol, motors, and happy to be here.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me on. My name's Kevin Mede. I am the one of the master coaches here at Law Enforcement Coaching, and I spent 25 years at the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office here in Washington State. Retired last November as a patrol lieutenant. Also ran the peer support team and the wellness program there before I retired, and here I am now.
Thank you. Mike.
Mike Lawson, did 24 years with the San Diego Sheriff's Department, last 10 doing peer support coordinator, helped jumpstart a wellness unit for the Sheriff's Department, retired 2 years ago, currently a one-man wellness unit for Chula Vista Police Department, which is just south of San Diego. We're doing some really good things there.
Awesome. I'll have Eric and then I'll have Marlon go.
All right. Hey, I'm Eric Tung. I am currently a patrol commander in my agency, Western Washington. I'm coming up on 18 years in policing. Some different assignments were FTO, canine handler. When I went to sergeant, smaller units like recruiting, training sergeant, was in my civil disturbance unit for quite a while, as well as peer support. And so now I oversee a lot of our wellness functions at the police department with peer fitness, peer support, contracting with a mental health provider, and just looking for different resources continually. So a lot of my off time is spent outside of with my family, my social media and podcasts. So Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram and Blue Grit Radio is my podcast where we dive into a lot of these fantastic and necessary topics: leadership, wellness, police culture. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And Marlon.
Happy Friday, everyone. Marlon Marachi, aka the IA guy, right? So 24 years with the Los Angeles Police Department. I spent my last 15 years as a sergeant, and my world involves around discipline. It involves around internal affairs, investigation processes, and all that good stuff, to the point where I consult, and I've been hired as an expert witness to look at these IAs and tell you whether it's a really good investigation or it's not. And alongside with my partner there, Eric, I also have a podcast called The IA Guy, and blessed and happy to know that in a year and a half, it's got to 1.2 million views, and just humbled by the fact that I was able to grab a specific function within law enforcement to talk about, which is something that we don't, and it kind of segues and it streams right into wellness. I'm sure that we can all talk about disciplinary issues as it relates to someone going through the process. So just happy to be here. Thank you, Tami. And let's go.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all for being here. I should have had Chris on here because Chris also did IA. And it's funny because his little backstory is, he went from undercover and he loved it. And then he went into IA and he hated it. But he honestly, it's been what has served him and as a business, it's served us because we understand what gets cops in trouble, what gets departments in trouble, and how to kind of navigate some of those things. So I absolutely love and respect your your education and perspective on everything. So, as we get going, so with our podcast, we started this, and every month we have a dedicated topic. And so we started with prioritizing self-care. We talked about that last month. And there was a reason for that, because if you don't have that baseline, if you're not taking care of yourself, everything else is going to be out of alignment. Now that we're talking about navigating toxic work environments, before we get into that, I'm going to stick with the theme that I've kind of started with these episodes. And I want to go around and just, what does your own wellness look like for each of you? Greg, we'll start with you. I'm just going to kind of keep it going in that circle.
Well, wellness for me, not only with my mental health, but physical wellness is really important, and having somebody to talk to. And as you know, Tami, I struggled a lot after I retired with trying to find my identity and my passion and purpose again, and being able to talk to somebody and from coaching, for example, with you and Chris, and that was something that was a lifesaver for me. And I only wish that I would have had that opportunity as I was growing up as a cop, and knowing that I could talk to somebody, I should talk to somebody. And I find a lot of times in my experience that you can't talk to your squad mates because they are usually as unhappy as you are if there's a problem going on. And then you get a lot of commiserating, and then you get a lot of the same kind of attitude. And it only makes it worse. So having somebody to talk to, and making sure you get your exercise and do something, get up and do something every day, walk for 30 minutes if you have to, just do something every day to try to keep yourself healthy. And diet is a huge part of, I'm not saying to diet, I'm saying your nutrition intake is a huge part of your wellness and your physical and mental health as well. You really need to make sure you're eating clean, eating stuff that's not processed, and you just need to focus on yourself more often.
Thank you. Kevin, what's your wellness? You have a new wellness routine, don't you?
I do. Yeah, I have a robust one now, much better than when I was working, which I wish I had back in the day, right? I would say for me, the key word is intention. Like Greg said, do something every day, but do it on purpose. And I know that sounds silly, but a lot of times we would get in that mode where you just, if I have time, if I get around to it, if I can, fit it in. But the reality is, it doesn't have to be this 3-hour workout, right? You can do small things. You can, read a few chapters of a book that's not cop related, right? That's not duty related. It's just something you enjoy, kind of escape, if you will. Do some light exercise, go for a, intense workout, whatever it might be. Walk your dog. Just do things that fill your cup. That, and for me, a big thing is trying to focus on what can I control. Even when I was working in law enforcement, it was, you find stress compounds when you focus on the things you can't do anything about. And, I'm sure we'll dive into that quite a bit with the toxic work environment. But to reframe and focus on things that you can control, and what you can control is how you take care of yourself. And so that's been kind of the focus is, what can I do? What can I control? And what do I want to do, that's makes me feel better, makes me feel healthier. And that may look different every day.
Yeah, for me, working out is obviously big. I paddleboard, I play pickleball. Probably about 10 years ago, I joined a men's group at my church. I now lead this men's group. And the cool part about this group is it's not full of cops. It's just average Joes. And we just go around. Yeah, it has a spiritual side to it. But to be honest, the biggest thing we do is check in with each other. We meet once a week here at my place. And yeah, just that check-in, having someone that you can talk to is huge. It seems simple, but I look back at my career, I didn't really do that or have that safe place to do that. Now that I'm one of the coaches with law enforcement coaching, like that is a resource that it's a safe place. That's somebody that knows your job, but obviously isn't going to go back and tell someone from your department. So yeah.
Awesome. Eric.
Very similar to what's been contributed. I have to do something physical daily. And I want to improve something mentally daily. And so to repackage it, I think what the gentlemen are saying, what I'll add to is that it's about inputs and outputs. Like, what are you allowing in and what are you bringing in, which will be relevant to this conversation today specifically. And that's nutrition. That's also social media, right? Like what is coming into your brain, into your sphere through your eyeballs, and then what are you putting out? And we're going to put out a result of what comes in. And so with the positives that come in, there's going to be negative, but we have to be really intentional to go back to what Kevin said, right? Intention. And that's a lot of what I try to focus on. Majority of days is try to bring in more good than negative, and by default, output as well.
I absolutely love that. I'm going to come back to the social media part in a little bit in the conversation. Marlon, what do you do for your self-care and wellness?
Question. So before and after. So before I retired, by the way, I've been retired 3 years in July. When it comes to this question, wellness, well, I can only reflect on soccer, right? Soccer to me, I'm a soccer junkie. I was born and raised in Peru, and all I ever wanted to do was to be a pro soccer player. And so when I got in the academy right after on probation, for the lack of better words, I was recruited. And next, I was cooking. I was cooking and balling for many years. I want to say about 15 years. So, in essence, that's what kind of kept me very well mentally. Then in 2012, I decided to go to law school. Don't ask me why. I think my exit plan was, hey, I just want to be a police attorney and just help out as many cops, because I'm here to tell you that the department gets it wrong sometimes. And so I did that, and I just wanted to take the bar. But believe it or not, driving 2 hours to law school for 4.5, almost 5 years, 3, 4 days a week, you know what? Now that I'm reflecting on it, it kind of kept me sane. It kind of gave me a different lens, if you will, of wellness. I wouldn't consider it complete wellness because it's very, very stressful to work full time, single dad, and a lot of overtime. And at the same time, actually go to law school. I don't know how I did it, but I did. Now, post retirement, to everyone here, I walk my dog every day. I love going. I've been going to the gym. I mean, gym is, you got to have it, right? I'm a gym rat. However, it just feels good knowing that you don't have to rush. I'm not in a rush. I'm not in a hurry when I go to the gym. I can stay there 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour and a half. It doesn't matter. And that's more than anything that keeps me going. That and walking my dog to the beach. I'll be there later on in about 25-minute drive. So
Nice. I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for setting the baseline. So now let's pull back the curtain and dive into a little bit. What do you guys think? And we don't have to keep going around in a circle. This is all just jump in. What do you guys think contributes to a toxic work environment, in your own opinions?
Well, I think, Tami, you get a lot of that from command staff. It depends on your top bosses. Can contribute certainly some of the toxic work environment. Having a good sergeant who can buffer some of that and still keep his guys motivated and working, but you do get a lot of that toxic environment coming from within the team and some of the team members. And I think, like somebody said earlier, you just have to be careful with what you take in, and you can't let it affect you. And if it's bothering you, again, maybe talk to somebody, but not necessarily somebody from that team. If everybody's unhappy, that's not going to solve anything. You just got to try to reframe what's going on in your mind, and like Kevin said, I think you deal with what you can, and then you get over what you can't deal with.
And misery loves company, doesn't it?
It does.
And I think that's the slippery part, is that it can start anywhere and it can breed out from anywhere. So you mentioned command staff. Absolutely. That's a gimme. But at the same time, like, so many times it's the lion. And so I have seen really well-intended bosses, even my own, try to be more positive, trying to bring constructive conversation, and right, wrong, or indifferent, because of whatever happened before or whatever the climate is, some of the people on the ground are like, they're not going to hear any of it. Right. And so it is tenuous. It is a long-term play of like, how do we slowly improve this? How do we slowly build this trust or build back this trust? But it can be at any place. And we all know that person, that officer. I'm sure a lot of people have a face popping in their heads. Like, they can walk into the briefing room, that roll call room, and all the life is just sucked out of that place. It's almost like the Darth Vader, just all the air is drawn out of your lungs. And it's a very powerful effect.
I think several things, obviously many things, can affect the toxic work environment. And one is lack of communication, poor communication, because that, has an air of, well, we're not important enough to tell us what's going on, right? Like, and then either an us versus them attitude from line officers or from the staff, right? Or from the union to the staff or whatever it is. And when it's really adversarial instead of everyone's in the same team trying to do the right thing, right? And then the other thing is that sense of I'm owed, right? The department should be responsible for my morale. The department should be responsible for my wellness. The department should take care of me. When in effect, it's, we talk about self care, the key being self, right? No one's going to swoop in and save you and make you go get a massage, make you eat well. It's just, we get in this culture and this environment of like, well, we are owed. And that's a real crappy place to be when that never follows through. Like that never comes, and it will never come.
Yeah, I mean, what Kevin just said is that it's that victim mentality. And I think most of us don't start there. It happens because we were wronged or something happened, but it's these common phrases like the department doesn't care. And you're right, because the department doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have a volition. It's the people within, right? So toxicity comes from the people for sure, but it's going to be the people that fix it. And how do we start fixing it? Then it is taking ownership, right? And I know everyone's already spoken to what they do for their self-care, but it starts with you, right? You can't lead others until you lead yourself. You can't try to uplift anyone unless you yourself are uplifting yourself and your own morale, your own attitude. And it's tenuous. It's like a waging war, but how do you bring that positivity? Because that is what's going to counteract the negativity, the toxicity.
Marlon, from the IA perspective, what do you think? But truly, like, what do you think creates a toxic work environment? Because I have opinions from what we teach, but I want to hear your input on that before I go off on a tangent.
I don't have opinions. Well, of course, I have opinions of what I teach also with Savage Training Group. Interesting question. So, an IA can be toxic. So, for example, not everything has to be an IA. How about that? Because when it is, it can be toxic. Here's a better one that I've been thinking lately: hypocrisy. Hypocrisy in this profession, it's at its ultimate highest level. And what I mean by that is, especially if I worked for a big agency. I mean, at one point we had 11,000 plus, right? Can you imagine working at a small agency, small to medium, and a couple of things. Number one, we're this thin blue line. We're happy. We take care of one another. Come Thanksgiving, hey, we're gonna have a potluck. You bring in your favorite dish. Don't forget to bring the pumpkin pie. As a matter of fact, at 3 p.m. the day before, you know what? You're gonna get off early because we're one big happy family. And then all of a sudden, Marlon gets an IA, and guess what? I can't talk to you anymore. I have to disassociate myself from you. In fact, rumor has it that you went from a policy violation to committing practically a murder, right? You're just this really awful, evil person. And the saddest part about this whole process is not just me, it's from my 140 plus guests that I've had thus far, is that you're left in the island all alone. So, what essentially happens is that the process in it itself becomes the punishment. And guess what? In small units and in small departments, it becomes toxic. So yes, it is a leadership issue, but more than anything, it's probably a culture issue. More so, only because you have to kind of maintain a good balance with your subordinates, and I got to go to the top. It happens at the top. And there's that one sergeant, to Eric's point, where that one person that, oh yeah, what's his name did this, let's get him, let's cut a face sheet, let's do an IA. Someone from the top or the next level of supervision to say, you know what, you got this wrong, you need to stop and have that candid conversation. So that's my 2 cents.
I love that. And I have a couple different things coming through my mind on this. Because we were talking about this in previous conversations, but that is a breeding ground for a toxic environment, because if somebody has an IA, they're sitting in there, like you said, they're on an island. They don't know what's going on. Nobody's reaching out to them. And then they take it personal. And it's like, well, if it's an IA, it's not personal. there's legalities. There's like they don't know if they can talk to you and what's going on, all of that. Now, if you're out on admin leave for whatever reason, say you got injured, you're having whatever things are going on, that also can leave you on an island. And we've heard that complaint a lot that nobody reaches out. My department doesn't care about me. And so you get left by yourself and you're kind of just thinking about it. And it's not that everybody doesn't care. Everybody's still working. So it's a different perspective. They kind of think you're okay, you're doing your thing. Kevin, do you want, because you went out a little bit, right?
Went out.
Didn't you go out on admin leave, take a break for a second?
Yeah, I went on medical leave for 2 months. Yep.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that, how that experience was
Right.
for you? And then coming back?
Yeah, so yeah, it was, surrounded by questions like what's really going on, and people made their own assumptions, didn't want to ask, or they would guess and whatnot, and it was just this. Why is everyone treating me weird? Why, I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't in trouble, but I'm not going to sit here and to talk about, if I had a medical issue, like put that on Front Street either. So you can sit there and have your assumptions and guess, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But you're alienated, right? It's like that pack animal where, oh, there's a weakness here and there's something different. So we're going to treat that person different. And we're going to, separate ourselves from them, or, we're not sure what's going on. That could be an IA or rumor or whatever else. And so there's this, tendency to withdraw and pull back when, we may not have all the facts. So it just doesn't matter. It's the same person, right? Or like Marlon said, sometimes the department gets it wrong if it is, in fact, like some type of investigation.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention and Marlon will know much more about this than I would about IAs, but I think the greatest thing to prevent toxicity within an agency were surrounding IAs. If they were done consistently, transparently, and timely, even though no one likes an IA, no one's jazzed about it, if they know what's coming and they can expect, if this happens, I will get an IA, and here's how it will go. That's not a positive, fun thing, but it takes a lot of the stress and the targeting aspect out of it. That this guy got an accident review board and this guy didn't, and they did the exact same thing. So what's going on here? And I think that's one of the biggest contributors to toxicity within an environment, within a workplace, that stems from the IA, angle.
If I may add into all that, spot on. I would only add that. Look, you can actually, as an investigator or a command staff officer, right, can call that accused employee and say, hey, Marlon, you know what? We're going to schedule this in 2 weeks. You have any questions about the process, let me know. Okay, cool. Hey, Marlon, we scheduled on this particular date. Are you going to be able to make it? Yeah. Anything else that you actually need? Okay, cool. Hey, Marlon, you know what? Thanks for showing up with your attorney. All the questions have been asked. I'm going to turn this into the next level review. Give me about 2 weeks and let you know exactly where this is going, right? Hey, Marlon, you know what? I turned it into 10. I captained the review unit for formatting, set structure, crossing the I's, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. We're good to go. Hey, Marlon, you know what? It's going to be presented to the chief in about 2 weeks, so you should be hearing something. Walking someone through the whole process kind of alleviates a little bit of this toxicity, if you will. And here's another more important part than anything, which is one of the questions I ask all my guests. When you go into the academy, who from internal affairs comes in and explains what their duties are, responsibilities, or their functions? Guess what? They don't. Now, imagine if you're kept in the dark about a function by which it's been negative for decades. We're evil. We're the dark side. We are just this bad people that are out to get you, right? And so can you imagine if someone went into the academy? Forget internal affairs. Why don't we bring someone in the academy to say, hey, my name is so-and-so, and guess what? I sat there where you were at, and I got fired for these reasons. And you know what? I'm accountable for my actions. Or you can come in and say, hey, I'm an officer. I sat there in your seat, and I took a 20-day suspension because of these reasons. This is what I learned. Or maybe internal affairs can walk in and say, look, let me kind of explain you, walk you through this whole process, how an intake is done. As a matter of fact, does anybody here know anything about the definition of misconduct? Who here can actually define what misconduct is, right? And so we are it's us to hold accountable. We are the ones that do it to ourselves. And by not having what I consider such a very vital function that's not talked about at all, it's super, super important. And to this wellness, you know what? 25 years ago when I came on, it wasn't talked about. Now it is. Now it's definitely talked about. And here's another point that I've been thinking about lately is how many of these suicides or how many of these suicidal ideations have any association with you going through an IA? And we don't know the answer to that. So I can go on, but I'll let other people chime in.
Yeah, can I cut in?
Yep.
There's a few things, and they overlap with what Kevin said and then what Marlon said. But Marlon, you're explaining communication, right? And that's like going back earlier to things that Greg and Kevin talked about, which is like command just says something, and then we're like, what does that even mean? Or like, where is this coming from? And explaining, like taking the time to explain, right? So communication, connection, it just takes intention, all that, right? So that's where you build trust. So to have that lead in, and that could be the IA investigator, that could be assigning peer support to say, hey, you're IA'd, here's your union rep in the same breath. Because you can talk to your union rep, you absolutely should talk to your union rep. And also, hopefully, you have a program and a policy where you're like, and also peer support. Is there someone we can contact that you feel comfortable with in peer support? So it's the officer's choice, right? It's the employee's choice. Who can we tell that you are being IA'd? We're going to tell them nothing about it. You can just tell them. Or if they say, no, I don't want you to tell anyone, I will consider peer support and I'll reach out in my own time, then cool, right? But it's just that reminder, like, these are the resources that are not new. They're not novel. We should all have them, but then we can use them in a meaningful way, right? Because to your point, and it was said earlier, right? The consistency, and whether it's IA or just treatment, if we're not being consistent, then what are we left with? We're left with this room for people to develop their own narratives, like someone's out to get me. And I think you just said it at the end too, Marlon, where we do it to ourselves, and we do it to ourselves. We eat our own. Kevin's out on injury, right? He's healing, and people are making up stories, or I heard this, or I wonder if it's this, and can you not be a cop anymore? After my officer involved shooting, we talk about command, and sure, I'm biased. I'm command staff now, but hey, I'm in the middle. Middle management is an awkward place to be at times. But when I was an officer, K9, and I was in officer involved shooting, I had chiefs, and this probably doesn't happen much anymore. It probably shouldn't happen anymore. But I had a chief tap me on the back and say, good job. I'm proud of you. I'm glad you're okay. There's ways you can relay that without probably saying some of that verbiage, like I'm glad you're okay. We're here for you, which is what I tried to do. But to say I'm proud of you, it's a little presumptive, but he was correct in that we did what we had to do. But it meant a lot. It meant a lot to get that from someone at the top that didn't know, we don't interact that much at that time in career. But when I was out on injury from that officer involved shooting, I had 2nd-degree burns on my arms. I was told later that another peer was in the locker room and said, you know what? It's been a few weeks. Like, why isn't Tongue back? Like, what is he just milking it? Like, he's milking his admin leave? That's at an officer level. That's not the brass. That's not admin, right? And it took someone else to say, do you know he got burned in that? And they're like, oh. And this is a dude that I got along with. And we never had any drama. We would go to any call. Like, we didn't work together, but for sure we'd probably have some laughs if we did go to a call together. So it's just to say, I don't blame him. I think it is part of the culture, but we do need the other guy that I mentioned to kind of check each other, right? We need to check ourselves, and we need to be like, hey, you don't know the whole story here. And even if he wasn't there to say, hey, Tongue has burns, he could be like, dude, stop. Like, what vested interest do you have to make a comment about this?
And that's one of the things, the time, whatever's going on in that, whether you're healing or there's legalities, like we get this ego in there of like, we think we know how long somebody should be healing for, how long somebody should be grieving for. Oh, you lose somebody close to you. It's been a year, get over it. Like we get that mentality. And that is ignorance. That is coming from somebody that's never been in that situation. And we can't put a timeline on healing. We can't put a timeline on grieving. And we don't know, and you guys aren't allowed to talk about it some of the time, especially if there's an officer involved shooting, what is going on. So creating those stories, that absolutely contributes to the toxic work environment. And we do need more people to just, hey, let's not. And it doesn't have to be a big dramatic thing of just like, stop. It can be that simple. One of the things you guys were talking about was the transparency, timeliness of an IA. I have multiple clients that have been going through IAs, whether they actually did something to warrant that IA or they had somebody target them and try to destroy them, because that absolutely happens. But the timeliness, they're sitting there for months with no communication, no clue what's going on, feeling like, did I do something? Did they find something else? Like that is leading to people either leaving the department or leaving the profession. And it's not the fact that there's an IA against them. It's because there is no communication. It's dragging on forever. And now they're sitting there in this turmoil and stress of like, did I really do something wrong? And this is going to be my reputation now. And that creates a lot of resentment and a lot of undue stress where, like Marlon was saying, if you just reach out and say, hey, we're still working on it. It's going to be a couple more weeks. Hang tight. That diffuses some of stress, because we create stories and we spin out and we go into really dark negative spaces very quick and easily. So I really like the perspective, all of that, because all of this is huge breeding ground for this toxic environment that we need to shift. And it's very, very simple to start shifting. Now, for LAPD, it's a little bit harder. You guys have a large agency. So are you guys going to become a super healthy, happy, wellness front, everybody's happy department? Maybe 5-10 years from now. But if you can get a few people to just move the needle, call each other out, say, hey, let's not do that. Hey, we're all going through a collective trauma together. Like, let's lean into each other and not try to take each other out. What else do you guys got? Yeah, Mike.
So I had a new sergeant one time. So this wasn't even an IA. He called me into his office. He had a veteran sergeant also in the office. And basically he said, hey, we've been noticing you've been taking lots of sick time on certain days. And I had been going through a work comp at the time. So I was going to doctor's visits, all verified. Mind you, I had 500 hours plus of sick time. And so I'm like, where is this coming from? Why is Marlon's laughing. Where is this coming from? And so they're like, you're not in trouble, but just want to make sure you know the sick leave policy. I'm like, yeah, I know the sick leave policy. And he gives me a piece of paper and he's like, basically, again, you're not in trouble. You just need to sign this. I'm like, what is going on? And like, I was kind of new. So I did the whole rep thing. And actually my friend was a rep. I was like, I shouldn't have signed it, but I ended up signing it. Long story short, I talked to my friend that was a rep. And he's like, Mike, how many hours sick leave do you have? I'm like, over 500. He's like, oh my God. He goes, dude, they're using you as like training, like a new sergeant training to write up somebody. And I was so upset. So 2 days later, I confront this sergeant. There's another different sergeant in his office. And I said, hey, what was that all about? And he was having a bad day or something. And he got pissed that I was confronting him on it. And I did it in a cordial way. I was just like, I just don't understand. And he just like laid into me in this office. And I could not believe it. And I was just like, I knew better than to like argue with him. And I just wanted to get out of there. And so I got up to leave and he said, sit back down. I'm not done with you. And he laid into me more. And I was like, oh my gosh. So anyways, I go back. I leave in like 10 minutes. I'm just thinking about it. And I was like, I'm going to talk to him outside of that environment, like man to man. So I texted him. I said, hey, bro, can we go get some coffee? And he was probably like, what the heck? Like, I just yelled at this guy. He wants to like have coffee with me. So I met him in our lobby. We go to have coffee and we were able to kind of just like, I mean, don't get me wrong, the guy's a dick. I'm just going to not sugarcoat it. Even my friends were like, oh yeah, he's an asshole. Like, what did you expect? But what was key was that we were able to talk and I just felt better, even though I feel like he wronged me. We were able to smooth it out. guess what? Fast forward probably 6 years, 7 years after that, he became my supervisor for peer support. So you never know what comes around goes around. San Diego Sheriff's is a pretty big department, but I just look back as like I tell Tami sometimes the old me versus the new me. The old me would have said, F you. I want nothing to do with this guy. And the new me was like, hey, let's talk about it. And I'm so glad I did because he ended up being one of my supervisors.
You feel like you were giving him grace by making that decision?
100%. Like, and he was having a bad day, like looking back, like just not as a coach, like he 100% was having a bad day and he was taking out on me. Like, it's kind of like your parents, like they're having a bad day. They take it on one of their kids. It totally was like that. I was like, wow, this poor guy, like, I mean, he needed coaching. He had some stuff going on. And at the time, obviously, I didn't care what was going on in his life. I'm like, dude, why are you being a jerk to me? Like, you don't have to be. And that lasted for the rest of my career. And it didn't have to be that way, but it was, they were using me as training when they could have been picking on somebody else that, like, I told some of my friends, they're like, Mike, I have 0 hours of sick time. Why are they messing with you? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. I asked that and I presumed because I think that's a lot of like the antidote that we need to talk about or think about with this toxic environment, right? Because it's not just toxic leadership, it's toxic peers, it's all that. But in that, like you knew where he's coming from. You knew he was not showing up as his best self. And you probably, if we're asked or took a pause, probably like, yeah, things are probably going on in his life that are not like the best. And to have that grace and be like, I can be the better, bigger person, whatever, and go about it this way. I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take that pause and that kind of curiosity, like what is going on here? Because the best cops, and I'm not saying me, I'm saying like I have a lot of examples where I was not this, but when they go to someone in crisis, right? They go to that dispute, they go to whatever call, someone with mental health conditions, whatnot. That person is going through some stuff. They don't need the police to be like, you know what, I'm going to prescribe you do this, do that, do it now. Like they need patience and grace, and those are the best cops that handle these types of situations. But like negotiators, crisis response, like I'm super impressed by those types of folks that do that work every day. But do we do it to ourselves? Like, do we do it amongst each other? I talking about IAs. Like, I got a text one time from a boss saying, "Hey, are you around to serve Tung his IA paperwork?" Not a great text to get. It was an accidental one of the mental flubs. I know this person, and I was like, that really sucks. And I'm like, I am here to receive it, right? And so I knew it was a total mistake. Could I have made a decision to be super pissed and go tell all my buddies how messed up this was, and how like waited like another demonstrative action that shows they don't care? No, it was a mental flub. Okay, like we joke about it later. At the same time, like I had as a new sergeant, you talked about the new sergeant maybe trying to flex his bars or learn something. As a new sergeant, I had a senior officer very clearly was testing boundaries and blew me off, hung up, even chuckled like when I said, "Hey, you can't do that." And he said, "Yeah, okay," hung up, click. I was like, okay, I know how I want to react. But if I was honest with myself in the moment, does that officer have everything going great in his life? No, he did not. Right. But I made a point later. Okay, like how do you balance this not wanting to be the toxic leader, but also like keeping things in check? Is went to a call later with him. He backed him on a call after the call was done. Said, "Hey man, let's talk about what just happened." Outlined it, and I was like, "I don't appreciate it. I don't want it to happen again. Are we good? Are we clear? Like, can we move forward?" And never had a problem with him again. And so I just offer that because I know that there's so many developing leaders that follow you and that you provide training to. And it's kind of like it's both ends of the thing, right? Whether you're receiving it or whether you're going to be the one maybe needing to check someone or keep them accountable. Like you can mind how you might do that and what effect it might have.
Well, when you say that, I think to myself that if I were that senior officer and you approached it that way, I think I would have gained a lot of respect for you after that. So I'm thinking that officer probably gained a lot of respect for you after that because of the way you did handle it and you move forward. So that's a good way to handle a situation like that.
That was my goal, truly. And I'll be honest, like for new supervisors out there or maybe more laid back people, like not the most overt person. I knew that he responded to, control and power and perceived power, but I also thought like, hey, if I play that game, I'm going to be throwing toxic energy back at him, and he's going to go run tell all the buddies, oh, like, hey, look, Sarge is trying to flex his stripes and not da da da. But I had another situation where someone was borderline insubordinate, and I told him, I was like, hey, I'm not gonna write it up, but if it happens again, I will, and I take it as you were being insubordinate, but this is between us. I want to get along. I want to move forward. Wrote it up in a very much more, I guess, like a really gracious place, because I wasn't going to let slide for the next guy too.
Right.
Well, I think you're bringing up some really good points too, because something that contributes to a toxic work environment is when someone promotes up. And now all of a sudden they're in a new position and they're trying to learn how to be a leader. And a lot of times when you get that new title, the people that you just thought were really good friends can actually turn against you. And they're like, oh, like, I don't know why he got that, or, da da da. Especially once you go, the higher up you go, the lonelier it's lonely at the top type thing. Because now, and that's people's insecurities, that's their own jealousy. And then they will absolutely, some will try to challenge you because and you can see it as a negative where you can be like, what kind of leader do I want to be? Do I want to be a reactive dick that's going to just be like, okay, no? Or do I want to take a step back and be like, okay, what's really going on here? And looking a little bit deeper. When I lived on Maui, I was a bartender for many years. And then I ended up buying the bar and becoming the owner. Nothing about me changed. I was everybody's favorite bartender. I signed a piece of paper and I went in the next day as the owner, and people were absolutely awful to me. Everybody was challenging me. And I couldn't do anything right. If I was keeping the prices the same, I didn't know how to run business. If I wasn't giving everything away for free, I didn't care about my patrons. If I upped the price, like, nobody was happy with me. And I had to establish my dominance as the owner and the manager and the leader. And I had to kind of be a jerk because I had people pushing me every day. So I had to 86 somebody every single day for 2 weeks until I established a new baseline of that's not going to fly. And so then once I did that and I earned like I am a boss, I am a leader, then everybody, because they calmed down and then we were able to get back to having fun. But you have to allow yourself that initiation period, but not be reactive to it and not be a jerk in return, but actually be like, okay, what kind of leader do I want to be? And if you're in that position, knowing, hey, I've had some leaders that were really bad and I don't want to be like that. What kind of leader what did I respect about the leaders? Let's mirror and learn that. Because as we've talked about, one of the parts of law enforcement culture is it's learned behavior. And so a lot of that negative stuff has been learned behavior. Well, that's how my supervisor did it. That's how I'm going to do it. You can change the game by just being a little bit more insightful. I love how you did that.
Yeah, I
yeah.
was going to say, don't be an asshole, man.
Yeah.
I love that phrase. You want to see a man's true character, give them power.
Mhm.
And what you allow is what will continue. So for senior leadership out there, if you have a newly promoted leader who is acting like a fool, who is on a power trip, who's just power grabbing and being a jerk, you need to deal with that, because that, more than anything, will probably breed toxicity when you allow that to fester unchecked. So if that person needs to go through whatever training, emotional intelligence training, well, you name it, something to curb that poor behavior, because it will continue and it will spread.
It will spread. That is the thing.
Eric,
It'll spread. What?
if I may share another war story, Eric, just kind of I hit the light bulb. I remember when I first made sergeant, there was this one FTO. He just didn't like me at all because he didn't get promoted and I did, and I think I had less time than he did. And my lieutenant tells me, "Hey, you got to write him up. Like you have to write him up for something. I don't recall what it was." And so here I am in the room with him, and he's just looking at me like you're just, you're being an asshole for doing this. And I'm taking you back to God, when did I was there in 2008 because I got promoted in 2007. And so here I am, and I talk to him, say, "Hey man, you know what? I got to write you up." You did this, and that, and you're supposed to, that write up is supposed to go in your file, right? So I knew, and there's a tradition in LEPD where if you're a probationary period as a sergeant and as a police officer, you have to transfer out. It's what they call the wheel. So you got to wheel out after a year and a half. Normally for sergeants, it's about close to 2 years, but for a probationary employee cop, it's definitely 1 year. So, anyways, I knew it was on my way out. So, what I ended up doing is I ended up just keeping it in my inbox. Never, ever put it in his file whatsoever. And I want to say about 10 years later, we run into each other and, hey, what's up, Sarge? What's going on? And so it's just little things like that that kind of, because I wasn't trying to be an asshole about it. And certainly I didn't think that he needed a write up, but it was just one way. It's one style, if you will, of kind of having some respect, right, about your job and letting them know, hey, this is what you did. This is what happened. This is how we're going to correct his behavior. Have a nice day. And he was probably surprised. Well, I'm definitely going to say he was surprised that it never ended up in his folder, in his file. So
I like that. Also realizing too that when people are really angry and they are coming off as jerks and narcissists and whatnot, anger stems from pain. And so the angry, yes, you can have a bad day. We all have bad days and we're all angry and that's fine. But if it's a personality trait, that's a tell. Like this person has dealt with something, they're dealing with something, and a lot of times the angrier somebody is, it's a little bit of an indicator that they're depressed. Are they going to tell you that they're depressed? No. Are they going to yell at you? Probably. We talked about this in the previous episode too, where when it comes to wellness and trying to get people, I know Eric, we've all talked about this. It's really hard to get people to show up to events, to trainings, to coaching, to therapy, to get them to actually use the wellness resources. Those that are in the industry, we can all sit here and talk about it all day. We love it. We're like, this is great. We feel good. We're energized by it. But those that need it the most are not leaning into it for multiple reasons. Some that have a lot of compounding pain and traumas, they are so scared of seeing a therapist or of getting any kind of help because once you pull that string, they feel like the whole thing's going to unravel and they can't actually handle it. The issue is it's actually heavier when you're not dealing with it than if you do pull the string and start unpacking it. It takes time, but for departments, I think departments need to get a little bit more aggressive in pushing people. I know we don't like the term mandating, but mandating some wellness. And I said this in the previous episode. If you have somebody that's in a lot of pain, that they're very angry, and they are the ones that are needing to see a wellness person, if you mandate it, they're going to be pissed off about it, and that's okay because they're already not happy. So you might as well push them into getting some help. Otherwise, it is just going to continue and continue and continue. It's going to spawn out to other people. It's going to eventually, they're going to isolate, or going back to IA, they're going to do something stupid. They are going to do self-sabotaging behavior. They know it's going to get them in trouble. It's almost like a little kid cry for help. I know Marlon, you've probably seen a million things, but some of the stuff that we know. Having sex in patrol cars. Guess what? You guys, a lot of you have body cams. If you're gonna be that dumb, turn the body cam off, maybe. Cue in to that one. Don't show up to work drunk. If you drank all night and you're going to work, guess what? You're still drunk. There's stupid things that are getting good cops in trouble because they would rather do that than go see a therapist or talk to a coach or reach out to peer support or anybody, their supervisor, and say, hey, I'm not okay. And as every one of us, I know that this has come out of all of our mouths. It's coming out of everybody that has some sort of platform in the wellness space. It is okay to not be okay.
yeah,
That is
absolutely.
okay. But it's not okay suicide's not okay. Can we say that? We all know that the suicide rate is off the freaking charts for law enforcement, for fire, for everybody in the purpose-driven professions, basically. It's not okay. And it's become more culturally acceptable to commit suicide than it is to go talk to a therapist. And so part of this conversation, I'm on a huge tangent right now. Reach out. That's my thing.
If I may add into that, Tami, definitely the most self-satisfaction that I've gotten out of the launching of the podcast and being on social media has been officers. These are officers, for the most part, that have been terminated and they've been accused of lying for the most part, have reached out to me and said, you know what, Marlon, thank you for doing what you're doing because now I feel like I'm not alone. I understand the process. If it wasn't for those conversations that you're having with your guests, one, two, if you're explaining the process, you're not keeping me in the dark, and it's that to me probably the most relevant that I felt. There's purpose more so than when I was active as a sergeant. Yeah, I could have probably promoted to lieutenant, maybe even command staff. And yes, I probably would have been relevant, but this right here is just at a whole nother level to the point where people actually reach out. Case in point, I had an officer who he got fired for dishonesty. A supervisor said, "Hey, you got to watch this guy's YouTube. You got to watch his podcast." And so he did. Gets a hold of me and says, you know what, sir, Sarge, thank you for doing this because I couldn't sleep at all. I've been waiting for my arbitration, my appeal, my hearing for it's coming up in June. And so and this was about a year ago. No, I'm not. I'm about 4 or 6 months ago. Anyways, he's been waiting for a year and a half. And so he goes, "Do you mind looking at my IA?" And I did. And I said, "Okay." I looked at it and I said, "Yeah, it's got holes." He goes, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, it's got more holes than Swiss cheese." That's the way I like to put it. And so he goes, "Hey, you mind getting a hold of my attorney?" I said, "Sure, not a problem." Attorney gets a hold of me because he wants me on the team as we're moving forward for this appeal process, this hearing. I said, "Okay." She gets a hold of me and she says, "Hey, Marlon, what do you think?" I go, "This thing has got more holes than Swiss cheese. There's no way that he was being dishonest." And so next thing you know, she brings me on board to consult as an expert. I do, mind you, it's only two allegations. There's one allegation of dishonesty, and the other one was like not working without a permit, off duty. 13 pages. I tore this thing apart for all the right reasons, right? And next, she says, "Hey, the hearing's coming up. You need to, would you mind testifying?" Not a problem. And so I did. So imagine me at city council chambers with like 9 commissioners. On one side is the city attorney with the chief. And of course, on the other side is the defense attorney with the appellant, the officer. And I'm proud to say just last week, they won. He got his job back. And a lot of it had to do with, with my contribution to my experience about, look, the department got this wrong. Now imagine, you want to talk about toxic environment, imagine the impact this particular city has, because my understanding is that it at this level it hasn't happened in over 30 years. There's been like 10, 15 officers that I got terminated at this kangaroo court, if you will, where it's just one-sided and they don't really care, and this kid made history. And so him and I have been friends and we talk every single day. And you know what? That's all I ever wanted to do when I launched this podcast. So,
Yay. Good job. So he got his job back. So now what's his mindset going back? Is he kind of bitter?
very, very good point. So what we don't know, it's a small, I want to say it's less than 100. So of course the whole world knows. And by the way, he was, everybody thought that he was a liar and that he took off to Mexico and was running a drug cartel. That was the rumor. And so, good point. So he's got a couple applications to lateral at other neighboring agencies, but what we don't know is is the chief going to double down, right, and just treat him and be after him, or do we just check the box and say, you know what, we got this one wrong, and so now you're welcome to stay here. And from what I'm hearing, what he's telling me is that the chief is kind of being accountable for going through all this, which by the way, you should have never went through this for the whole nine. What I think for me, what I get the most out of this in terms of the department is how can you actually uh, go have this kid go through this whole process, knowing that if you would have gotten some advice, some really good advice, that you know what, we didn't have to put this kid through all this. And now it affects the entire department. And so now what I heard is that there's like 10 other officers that want to lateral and get out because of what happened. So,
Well, the accountability is so big, and I don't know why it's so hard for people to just say I was wrong and just take it. It's not that painful to actually do that. I've done that with my daughter where it's like I've had my moment where I've, gotten mad at her or yelled at her or something and been like, "Oh, you know what? My bad. I'm not doing a good job as a mom today, and let's talk about that." And I will talk it out with her when I know, like, I either accused her because we have Chris and I, we have his son and my daughter, and they play off of each other and stuff. So one will get in trouble and the other one actually did it or whatnot. And it's okay to say, "Oops, my bad." Moving on. I want to honor everybody's time. Um, I always have a little roundabout last 2-second mic drop moments of if somebody were to just tune in to this part of the conversation, what is your little takeaway for them? What advice do you have if they are trying to figure out how to navigate a toxic work environment, or maybe they are the toxic work environment? What is your input for them? Greg, we'll start with you and go back to the circle.
All right. Well, the first thing is you're going to have things in your career that you cannot control. You're going to have, for example, my first few years of my career, we had a new sheriff every 4 years. And these new sheriffs come in and they bring in a whole different attitude and they bring in a whole different set of rules. And some of the rules are just stupid. And you can bitch and moan and complain, and this is dumb and I'm not going to do it. Or you can just realize that's my new reality. So how am I going to reframe this so I know that I'm going to, I have to do this. As stupid as like we went for years without ever wearing a cowboy hat. And we had a new sheriff come in and he liked the old Western look. And so he mandated that everybody, once you get out of your vehicle, you have to have your cowboy hat on. Well, of course, nobody liked that because now they had to go out and buy a new cowboy hat to wear. And so you had to have your cowboy hat. So is that your new reality? Then you're just going to have to learn how to deal with it, or reframe it so that you can, move on and make the best of it. Fix the things that you can fix, and the things you can't fix, you need to just try to figure out a way to get through it and to make it the most livable and comfortable for you while it's there.
Kevin?
For me, I would say the word of the day, kids, is boundaries. And have boundaries in place that serve you well, whether it's you turn off your phone if you're not on call, you don't check your email on your weekends or your vacation, or you're not doing that kind of crap. You owe that agency nothing. And conversely, the agency owes you nothing. Every 2 weeks, you square up. You get a paycheck for working hard, and you're even. That's it. If you go into the room and there's a squad and they're the group of bitchers and moaners and complainers, have a boundary. Leave. Don't engage with them. They're energy vampires, like Eric talked about earlier. That's just toxic. That just drains your soul, man. So if you surround yourself with people who are problem solvers, can do, more positive, not Pollyanna and realistic, but people who are like, yeah, we're going to control what we can, we're going to be positive and enjoy life as much as we can, versus that other crowd. That's another boundary you can put in place to kind of protect your peace.
Awesome.
Yeah, so for me, every department's going to have some sort of toxic environment. I don't care if you're the 10,000 department or the less 100. From a wellness perspective, a wellness coordinator, having those resources and not just checking the box. Saying you have a peer support, I'm just telling you, I've been on peer support, that's not good enough. You have to have multiple resources where your people feel safe. And Tami hit on it. If I was a chief of police, there's any chiefs, hopefully they're watching this someday, make it mandatory to do some sort of check-in And what I'm going to try to do at my department is not just with a therapist. It could be with a therapist. It could be with a wellness coordinator. We have great chaplains in our department. It could be with a coach, just like our coaching company. You're checking in with someone, and I guarantee you're going to minimize so many things on the back end because that's all we really want. Just like Marlon said, that guy just needed someone to talk to, and obviously you were able to help him. But man, he was able to resonate with you and he felt comfortable with you, and that's huge. And that's all he needed. Like, can you imagine if he hadn't had that? And so, just if you're a department, just providing those safe resources and multiple resources, not just one.
I would say everyone has a vote, right? When we talk about environment, work culture, morale, toxic work environment, we all have a vote and we all have a contributor. So are you going to contribute in a positive direction, or are you going to contribute to a negative direction? Or are you going to abstain and not contribute? Then you're also accepting that. And you need to be okay with that. To what the other guests have said is like, if you are not partaking, then you have to recognize that. And that is your choice. And that's absolutely fine, right? We have to vote with our feet sometimes, to the point that Marlon shared with that story where the officer won his job back. If he wins his job back and he turns around and leaves, absolutely, right? And 10 more people follow, then absolutely, more power to him. But if you choose to stay, then let's do something about it that's constructive and improving the situation, not just bitching about it. I'll share one quick thing, which is that, like so many people, I was one for a long time that said, we have poor leadership. We have poor leadership. And that was as a sergeant. And as a commander, I was talking to some of my sergeants and I heard that same thing. I was like, do we? Because last I checked, you and I are also leaders. So are we all poor leaders, or are we doing something about it? So the sergeant paused and he kind of took himself back. He's like, you know what? I do think it matters how we say this and how we accept that, right? So if we have poor leadership, then we are also part of the problem. We are by default the problem. And there's more sergeants than there are lieutenants or command staff, right? So there is power in that, and just recognizing that, just like everyone else has said, like there is a personal choice in everything we do.
What I will say is, quote unquote, you're not alone. That's basically it. And you know what? We need to stop working in silos and all of us be in the same platform. And we're doing that. I'm really, really impressed. And I'm really happy to know that as the profession continues, the newbies, right? Especially the new, whoever's listening and watching, you have help out there where before it just, you didn't know where to look for. And to Mike's point, you're right. Yeah, you can be a peer supporter, right? Or a peer counselor, but that's not enough. And so, I got to give a shout out to Eric for what he's done. And I know that he's been very consistent with his podcast. And I can only imagine the amount of people that reach out in terms of wellness, because he does an outstanding job providing that content for you. But just look around. It's great. I think social media is a really good platform for you to get help if needed. But more than anything, guess what? You're not alone.
And I'm going to wrap it all up. I didn't even get into the social media part, but since you just mentioned social media, you are a reflection of who you surround yourself with. So on social media, your algorithm is going to tune in to stuff that you're looking at. So if you're doom scrolling and if you're in law enforcement, well, there's a couple parts to that. If you're in law enforcement, you're going to have body cam footage. You're going to have all these different stories come up. Also know that social media works against cops, and that's a whole segment I could do. The good stories are absolutely censored and washed down, and you're going to get peppered with all the negative stuff. That is not the actual reality. Turn off social media. If you're getting all that negative stuff, turn it off and go outside and go talk to your community, because the reality is, in most places, the community is actually very supportive of law enforcement. But the internet would have you believe differently. So turn off the negative, but in your social media, go step outside of the law enforcement. We talked about this a little bit with books and different things. Go outside of the law enforcement world and look at different wellness people that you can influence you and bring up some positivity in your feed. And then the last thing that I want to say is, we've all said it, reach out, have those conversations. I really liked what Mike talked about, you have that salty, negative dog in your department, take them out of that environment and go get them to go do coffee or lunch or something. Take them outside of that and have some thick skin, because if they're not a happy person, they're not going to be very welcoming about this coffee and lunch. But if you can get them to sit down and kind of get them to start talking about some of this stuff and don't take anything personal, understand that they are going through some stuff. But if you lean in and you push a little bit, you might get some defensiveness back at first, but if you keep leaning into that, eventually you're going to start peeling back those layers of the onion, and they're going to be like, hey, I'm actually dealing with some stuff. So lean into those salty dogs and the negative people, understanding it's not about you, it's about them. So with all of that, at the end of the month, every month on the last Tuesday, we have a live group coaching call where everybody can join into the conversation. And if things are working for you, we want to hear from you. If you're like, you know what, that's all great, but that would never work with my department, or whatever that is, come be part of that conversation. We will share the link out on social media, all the different things. And if you like the podcast, you like the conversations, do all the things, click, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Something Wellness Podcast. Thank you guys for being here, and until next week.